Watch collecting is such a strange thing to me. You buy a bunch of items that you like, and together it's called a collection. And somehow this collection is supposed to describe my thought process, my personality. Isn't that so strange? Hey everyone, welcome back to Karen Co's YouTube channel. I'm Derek, and I woke up really early this morning. I had the most random thought. I was like, why do I collect watches? And how do I collect watches? And why is the things that I like now so different from when I started? So today I'm going to share with you 5 things that I wish I knew when I first started. So follow and learn from my own mistakes, because watch collecting is not a cheap hobby, or collecting in general. It requires money. Real quick before we jump in, please support our channel by subscribing, especially if you like watches. If you like learning about watches, if you like watch reviews, we're also an authorized retailer of over 25 different watch and jewelry brands. So we do a lot of stuff on this channel, and also follow us on Facebook and Instagram to also see some of the other content we post. Now let's jump right in. I hear this all the time when people come into our store and they're just browsing among themselves. So when there's 2 people, one of them will go like, oh, I really like this watch here. And the other person will go like, oh no, don't get that one. That one's Quartz. And then me, in my head, I'm like, wait, hold up. Don't get me wrong. Automatic watches are freaking sweet. They're awesome. Most of my own watches are automatic as well. It's a bunch of combination of gears and mechanical pieces with a gear train and a mainspring and an escapement. And somehow on your wrist is a watch that keeps time. But it's not the only way a watch can time keep. I think there's a huge notion that Quartz is cheap, or that's not worth the money, or it's poorly assembled. And I think a lot of that comes from fashion watch brands over the years using entry-level quartz movements, and then those watches not being timeless, something that you could pass down. So people will say things like, I used to have a Quartz watch and now I only collect, X, Y, and Z luxury watches now. But I think the key here is who makes the quartz movement. Easiest example here is Grand Seiko's 9F quartz movement. If those movements are regulated to 10 seconds per year, and some of them are even 5 seconds per year. Not to mention Grand Seiko's finishing, all that is still the same on those watches as you would see on their higher end pieces as well. Another example I have is my wife. She really loves the Cartier Panther. And if I were to just be like, no, don't get a Quartz, you should only get automatic, but she really loves the design, then you know what? Quartz is actually great here, because what Cartier here is known for is their design. And would we really want to be hand winding that tiny watch case every day? Like, Quartz is just easier and it still looks elegant here. Don't be afraid of Quartz. To add to this, also don't be afraid of other kinds of watches like manual winding or solar powered. And I think manual winding is a great example if you want to get closer, like on a personal level with your watch. I know, sounds so weird, but like every morning when I take out my Speedmaster and I hand wind it, it's just part of my routine now. It's not tedious for me. Maybe at first you think it's tedious when you hear you have to do it, but it's the same as like brushing my teeth in the morning. It's just part of what I do, who I am. And it kind of lets me know that I'm the sole reason why this watch is getting power, as opposed to a battery powering it or my movement kind of indirectly powering my watch. And so that's why I say, don't be afraid of Quartz. Automatic is still awesome, but don't be afraid of Quartz, and don't be afraid of other kinds of sources of energy like manual winding as well. Number 2, size and gender assigned watches. So for the men, for the guys, don't be afraid of a 36mm watch. I know, so contentious. Most people these days think 36mm is strictly a lady's watch. But to me, it's more of a unisex size. If you look back the last 50 plus years, watches and their diameters were way smaller. And 36mm used to be considered a men's watch. Nowadays, sizes are going larger. But I've been seeing a lot more watch manufacturers starting to do like vintage inspired recreations of their own pieces in smaller case sizes. And I think that's to show that a lot of people still appreciate those smaller case sizes, especially if you're like me. My wrist is 6.5. I don't have a huge wrist, so I do love watches that are in between like 37 to 39mm. And I don't want people to miss out on some great watches just because they think it's supposed to be a lady's watch. Great example of this. Another Cartier example is the Cartier Santos in medium. I mean, that thing looks so killer on the wrist. If you tell someone it's 35mm, they're immediately gonna think it's a lady's watch. But then when you have it on the wrist, it fits so well, and I think it just works great across the board. I've seen people buy the large size of that watch simply because they were like, oh, 35, that's for ladies. I'm not gonna buy that. The community and also watch brands itself is doing a better job at creating watches without gender assigned roles. This takes me to number 2 of this. On the flip side of this argument, If I, as a guy, want to wear a 36, 37 millimeter watch that people might consider a lady's size, then ladies should also be able to wear a 40, a 41, 42, but not even that. But they should be able to wear the watches that are marketed towards men. You know what I'm talking about. A lot of the watches in the industry that are marketed towards men are robust and sporty. They've been to Everest and the moon. And then the ladies' watch is like, this is dainty and beautiful and it has mother of pearl and gold and sparkly. But there's so much history to the watch in the sporty side, and it's not limited to just men. It's limited to, I guess, humans as general. So ladies should be able to wear the same watches that guys wear. And also, there should be no gender assignment to these watches. It shouldn't be telling us who it's meant for. There's no one way or right way to collect. And so what I'm trying to say is that if the watch speaks to you, just go for it. Like, who cares if the sizes people consider as ladies? Who cares if the watch people might consider as a men's and you're a lady? Limited editions. This one is a double-edged sword, and I am a repeat offender of buying limited edition watches. Hear me out. I've had watches growing up, but I didn't start buying my own watches with my own money until about 2016. And so in 2016, I had only a handful of watches. I had a Tissot and a Swatch. And when I was getting started, I was really thinking, what should I bring into my collection to make it special? And when I would see a limited edition watch, that like clicked in my head right away, like, I want something that's limited, that's rare, that's not easy to find. And don't get me wrong, a lot of those watches that I was able to acquire, I do love them, so I do love those. But on the flip side, I see now every year some of these watch brands always have a limited edition. And unless it's like a very specific, intricate dial process or a special case or a new movement or something that's really unusual, if it's just like a new watch with a new dial color, to me, it's a little uninspired to me now. So my tastes have changed. And I realized that just because it's limited edition doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually better than, a lot of times there's a non-limited edition version of that. There's a lot of great watches that are not limited edition. And I can't even think off the top of my head of what a true limited edition watch would be, because some of it is, marketing inflated, or some of it is just pieces that are rare and hard to find. They're not really limited edition. But I think if we look back at watches of the past, things that we consider vintage, those watches, why they get historical for a lot of these watch brands is because of who wore them or what these watches were able to survive through or endure. And I really love those stories more. I wish that more of that could happen today with the new stuff, so that later in the future, some of the stuff we're collecting now is going to be a limited edition in the future. Yeah, so just don't fall into hype of buying limited editions like me. It's okay to buy them, but I'm just saying, don't fall into only jumping on the bandwagon, because I've done that many times. And now I'm starting to be like, wait a minute, that's not limited. All right, this one is gonna sound a little hypocritical, but hear me out and I'll explain it in full. So you don't need one watch in every category. Back in December 2020, I made a video, how to build a 3-watch collection. Go check that out if you're just getting started. I'll link it below. But basically, it's how you can just have 3 watches that'll cover all your bases. To me, when you're first getting started, variety is the spice of life. It's great to try out a bunch of things because you want to see what you like and what you don't like. Now, for me personally, I come to a point where I wouldn't say I'm a veteran or anything, but I definitely have a better taste of what I like to acquire, what watches I like and what watches don't appeal to me. And so instead of having one dress watch, one aviation watch, one chronograph, one moon watch, one perpetual calendar, one dive watch, one gold watch, one two-tone, you just collect what speaks to you. And once you find out what you go ahead and like, that's what really makes collecting fun. Like if you go to a watch collector meetup and you meet the guy who only collects 37 millimeter vintage watches with perpetual calendars on them, it's like so cool to see someone nerd out and go passionate in just that one category, but that's just like their thing. On the flip side, like if you are the guy who wants one of everything, like of course, like go ahead and do it. But what I'm trying to say is you don't need one watch per every category out there unless you specifically want to do that. A handful of watches will just do perfectly fine for you. All right, I saved the biggest one for last. This one is resale value. Stop worrying about the resale value. Stop worrying about the market value of your watch. This happens all the time. Someone will come in the store and they want a steel sport, whatever watch, and they can't get it at retail at any AD, and they don't want to pay a premium. And they see a bunch of other watches that they really love, but what stops them is they're like, oh, I really love this watch and I would buy it, but I'm worried about the resale value. Here's the secret. Most watches will not yield a strong ROI. Most watches are made to just be watches, not investments. I said most watches are made to... Yes, it's definitely nice when you get the chance to buy something that has a strong market value. Of course, go ahead when you get that chance, but you shouldn't make that your mantra to only collect watches with a strong ROI. I've seen so many people miss out on great watches just because they're worried about their plan B or their escape plan. You got to get married to your watch. You got to go all in and commit to it and stop worrying about how you're going to divorce it later. I mean, it is okay to sell it along the way, but you got to just enjoy it. It's such a cliche, but buy what you like is really the main thing that holds, your sanity together in watch collecting. Stop going into passionate watch groups and asking everyone what is the best ROI, what's the best watch for a return on investment. Because most of the time, you're going to make a fool of yourself. And what you're doing is you're going into a group where everyone is passionate about the watch or the brand, and you're just trying to turn something that is emotional and passionate for people and just turn it into a profit in numbers for you. You're just going to end up alienating yourself in the end. All right, so just a quick recap on everything we covered. Number one was automatic watches are not everything. Don't be afraid of quartz. Don't be afraid of solar power, manual winding. Number two was size and gender assigned watches. Don't be afraid to try watches in different case sizes. Don't be afraid to try watches that are assigned for a specific gender, especially if you really love that watch. Number three is limited editions. Don't be like me. Don't fall into the bandwagon of perpetually buying limited editions. Really buy things that you find are valuable to yourself. Number four is you don't need one watch per category in your collection. You can make a killer collection out of 3 watches. I've seen even people do it with just 2 watches. You can definitely do that too. And number 5, the biggest one, most watches are made to be just watches, not investments, is stop worrying about resale value. There is no one way to collect, but I don't want people to miss out on watches because they set these strict rules for themselves and they haven't been able to just freely explore and see what's out there. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I had a ton of fun. Leave a comment below on what things you wish you knew when you first started collecting, and like this video if you enjoyed it. It's been a minute, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.